And thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. We are still attempting to break down what is happening with the haircuts for you, the debt exchange, which is an appropriate technical term for you. We've examined it in many, many ways. But tonight, what we want to do is taking a cue from something that the Deputy Finance Minister told us when he was here on Monday. He says that the debt exchange program alone will not fix our debt crisis. It won't. The other bit that will help is fiscal discipline, fiscal measures that have been introduced, the cut in expenditure and others. That together will deliver a healthy economy in the medium to long term. So we've exhausted and looked at the debt exchange. Of course, we are waiting to see what the external debt exchange program, or even if that's, assuming that's the approach they take, will also look like. So we'll put that aside for now, and we may return to that subsequently. But tonight, I want to focus on that second bit, on government afro as against the people's haircut. The people will take a haircut. As we now know, it is inevitable. But what is government doing to its afro? And government itself will admit that it has an afro. And that's why when I go through my presentation, you will see that they have also attempted to propose some cuts to their afro, government afro. But the question we need to ask tonight and attempt to answer is government afro cut enough compared to the people's haircut that government is imposing? That's the question we want to answer by the time I finish my presentation. So let's start by looking at what the basic fundamentals are when it comes to debt exchange, which is the people's haircut, right? So all bondholders, institutional bondholders, will have to exchange their bonds for new ones, right? Which it is going to have the ultimate implied and effective outcome of that is a haircut on your interest. So as it stands now, you are going to receive a 0% interest in 2023, which is a haircut, 5% only interest for the institutional bondholders, including banks, pension funds, insurance firms, etc., 5% in the 2024, and then 10% in 2025 till maturity. This is assuming you still are waking up and don't know what's happening in the last few days. So that's the basis, and that's the haircut that government is imposing on you. So then government says, well, we are doing that. We are asking you to take that significant haircut, right? So we need to also meet you halfway. So in the 2023 budget, government then presents additional measures to trim down its afro, right? So what did government propose to do to trim down their afro? 50% cuts in full allocations to public political appointees is one of them. A ban on the use of V8s and V6s or equivalent except in cross-country. Then there was limited budget allocations for purchase of vehicles as well, which was put up. We put a 3 question marks there. When you say limited budget allocation for purchase of vehicles, what exactly is that? The overriding common theme you see, it is a vagueness of the afro cuts. Because the afro cuts do not put numbers to the cuts. But when you go to the people's haircut numbers, it is tangible, right? Because when they say 0% tangible, 5% tangible, 10% tangible, you can touch the people's haircut. But why can't you not touch the government's afro cut? It's a very fair question to ask. Because look at them, 50% cut in full allocation. Yeah, you can touch that. Ban on the use of V8s. Who is monitoring that? Who is monitoring that? I mean, even a 50% cut in full allocation to political appointees, who is monitoring to ensure that this actually is happening? But when I say you can't touch it, it's not tangible enough, how much is this saving us exactly? 50% means nothing unless you can put a proper real value to it. That's what I maintain. Because when you look at the people's cut, the people's haircut, it is saving this economy in terms of debt servicing and the debt burden 137 billion cedis. So hard number. You can't get it wrong. But 50%, how much is it that the government afro is saving us when they cut 50% in terms of allocation for? We don't know. So that is one of the key differences in the way the government is treating its afro and how they're treating the people's haircut. And then you come to limited budget. Then you come to only essential official foreign travel across government, including SOE, shall be allowed. Only essential. Okay, so who defines what is essential and what is not? The few ministers that we saw post the budget, because this was in the budget, who traveled to Qatar to go and watch the Black Stars, was that an essential official foreign travel? It's a question we don't know. Maybe they went on their own volition, they used their own monies to buy the tickets, and this is on their own budget. So maybe, yeah, that didn't qualify. They're not using the taxpayers' money, so they didn't need to go through this sort of approval process. But those are fundamental, relevant questions that we need to ask. And there was more. Government-sponsored external training for officials also going to be cut, reduction of expenditure on appointments, suspension of housing utilities, and all non-government agencies will not be established in 2023, reduction in the size of convoys. These are good, but are they enough? And remember the discrepancy in the treatment of the people's haircuts and the government's afro cut is that these ones hard to quantify what they are delivering in terms of real value to you, but in the people's haircut, you can't quantify. Here it is. For the people's haircut, hard numbers, 137. And we did this calculation for you yesterday by ourselves, because then if you look at our total debt stock, this people's haircut will deliver 29.31% reduction in the total public debt. So the people's haircut clearly is going to deliver some significant huge benefits to us that you can quantify. So what percentage reduction in the public debt stock will the government afro cut deliver? I don't know. Maybe my guest can help us. But then this is the big question. Is government doing enough? Okay, let's try and answer that question. We start answering this question by looking at the budget. Okay? Now, if you look at the budget, total budget allocation for this year, for what the entire, allocations, total expenditure allocations. This is one, I want to compare last year to 2023, the coming year in the budget. Then that gives you a sense. 145 billion is what the total allocations were for this year in the 2022 budget. In the 2023 budget, the allocation has shot up to 227.81 billion. The key question to ask, you are in a crisis of unprecedented proportions and you are proposing to spend more year on year. That must immediately raise questions. Because you know what the problem we are in right now? We are spending way beyond our means. We are spending money we don't have. So when you have a situation like this, all you need to do is to begin to spend less than you actually earn. So you're expecting at least to be, this shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't have an expansionary budget in a time of great austerity and an economic crisis. But just looking at this figure alone tells you maybe the answer to this question is leading to suggestions that maybe the government's afro cut isn't enough. But we did a bit more breakdown. And for me, this is the fascinating bit of this. Now, look at some of the key allocations. We found one great positive in the allocations to the government flagship programs and to the Office of Government Machinery. There's a positive there because in 2022, there was a 3.1 billion allocation to Office of Government Machinery. All the staff in the presidency, those huge numbers of presidential staffers, they were taken from this, huge, 3 billion. But in 2023, because of austerity, we've reduced it to 1.4 billion. So that is good. And so you see a 1.7 billion CD decrease, right, in how much we're proposing to spend on the president and his office. So that is good. However, if you're in a crisis, do you still maintain your flagship programs and spend more on them The argument, if you read the IMF-owned Q&A document, is to suggest that you have to look at this and review to make it more efficient, more cost-effective, and value for money. But yet, we have a situation where in 2022, for free SHS, government budgeted $2.3 billion. In 2023, in this austere year of unprecedented proportions, no year can compare to this in our history, you are proposing to spend more. You are proposing to spend 660 million cedis more on free SHS. The finance minister, when he delivered the address recently, said they will review it. But if you're reviewing it, you should review it to show that you have austerity. That's the show that. The jury's out on that. Then you have planting of food and jobs. It used 630 million was what was allocated to it last year. 700 million is what is allocated to it now. Again, 70 million cedis increase in that. PFJ. One district, one factory. 260 million last year. Again, an increase of 90 million this year. These are great social interventions. But these are not normal times. These are not, you can't be expanding them in this year, right? So that is one of the key things we looked at. And then the big one I found, which others have suggested, that raises a lot more eyebrow. In an austere year, in a crisis year of unprecedented proportions, never seen before, apocalyptic circumstances, you have allocated 80 million to a vanity project like the National Cathedral. But let me give you other statistics to compare what this could have done to a struggling, dying economy. Compared to the student loan trust, I told you that free SHS is good because obviously it's helping people. But student loan trust, that will help your students go to school and fund themselves. I went to school, tertiary, relying on student loan trust. They got 3 million. National Cathedral, vanity project, 80 million. If you go to plastic waste recycling, for a country that is big now on climate change, we went to COP27, 2.4 million. If you look at Green Ghana project, another great investment that will bring us, if you look at the climate finance, billions of dollars, you're spending only 2.5 million there, but giving 80 million to a vanity project to build a cathedral. Now, for me, this one is a big one. Water sanitation initiative for a president who says, I want to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa. He is allocating 74.48 million cedis to water and sanitation initiatives, but allocating 80 million to a vanity cathedral construction. I mean, you need to, these are hard facts. These are all pretty much hard facts that on the face of it tells his own story. I mean, in terms of priority, a vanity project against water and sanitation that will save lives. So that tells a story. But this is not all, by the way. This is not all. I want to also go to the Constitution and look at the size of government, because many of you have said, cut the size of government. So we said, let's look at that. How much saving can we make if we cut the size of government? And we are looking not at the number of ministers, but at the number of ministries. So we start with the basic assumption in the Constitution. And if you look at Article 76, it says cabinet ministers, the core team of ministers and ministries you need to run a government. The Constitution specifies it. Anything above that is superfluous. You can choose it. The Constitution won't limit you. But it says you cannot have something, as far as cabinet is concerned, the most critical ministries, between 10 and 19, right? But currently, so which means that the framers of the Constitution didn't set this limit for its sake. They did it because they knew we can run a whole government in a small, tiny country of 30 million people with 19 ministries. But we have 28 ministries. So it's bigger than we can run it, right? I'll tell you why we can run it very shortly, but stay with me. Assuming we work with the Constitution, and why should we? Because we are President himself said it, we are in crisis. When you're in crisis, you take extraordinary measures. You reduce, you cut drastically. You're asking the people to take 137 billion cedis off your debt. That is extraordinary. What is extraordinary is when the government also reduces it to 19 ministries. If you did that, right? If you take the allocation to all the 28 ministries we have now, it is 72 billion. If you did 19, it brings it down to 66.9 billion. How much are you saving? You're saving 5.8 billion if you run it just with the 19 ministries. And I'm going to show you that you can run this government with 19 ministries. You come down to what? 5.8 billion. Now, let me even surprise you more. Let's go back to the people's haircut. SNIT is exposed. SNIT is exposed to the people's haircut. The people's pension fund sitting at SNIT. They're exposed to the bond haircut that they will receive, right? We found that this amount, this saving that you are going to make, if you reduce it to 19, could service the domestic debt of SNIT, insurance companies, standard loans, and you even have a balance of 3.8 billion. What it means is you pay off SNIT's, you don't have to hold SNIT's bonds and give a haircut to it. You don't have to hold the insurance company's bonds and give a haircut to it. You simply make the saving, pay them off, and you still have money. The people's haircut will not be as santo as it's 137 if you reduce to 19. Let me explain. This, according to the finance ministry themselves, right? SNIT's exposure to government bonds, according to finance ministry data, is 540 million. The insurance companies, 1.1 billion. The insurance companies, 1 billion. Standard loans, 380 million exposure, right? And these are the percentages. Together, it is just over 2 billion cedis. But what government has set down with the debt exchange is that all those pensions that we paid to SNIT, and they've used some to buy, they've used 540 of that to buy government bonds, will now take a haircut on their interest, as you know, I've explained at the beginning already. But if you do this cut in the ministries, you save that amount, that will have to just clear off that debt. You pay SNIT, you don't have to hold SNIT's, the pension funds people hold in SNIT that they've used to buy bonds, you clear that. You clear for insurance companies as well. And they've been meeting all week trying to see how they can respond to the government debt exchange because it will affect your premiums you're paying to the insurance companies. But government can save so much to clear all this. What would that mean? You exempt SNIT from the haircut. You exempt insurance companies from the haircut. You exempt standard loans from the haircut if you reduce your ministers to only the cabinet ministers. So the question, can you run this country on 19 ministries? Yes, you can. Ghana's population, 30 million. United Kingdom of 67 million. Do you know how many ministries they have? 23. So can you run this country with 19 ministers? Yes, you can. United States of America. Do you know how many cabinet ministers they have for a population of 332 million? 19 cabinet ministers. Ours, for 30 million, is 19 ministers. So can you run it on 19? Absolutely yes. Because you have so many other agencies who can do the actual job. Why do you have a fisheries ministry and an agric ministry? Why? Why? So that is the question. I don't know what your conclusions are, but you've seen the data and what it suggests. My guests are joining me. Professor Bockwing is my guest tonight. And let me ask him one quick question and the others. Give me a quick reaction to this question. They give me a quick reaction. I'll take a break after that, and then we'll come and expand on the basis of what I've done. Prof. Bockwing, thank you for joining me. I need to ask you, also joining me tonight, by the way, is Franklin Kujo, a good friend of mine. And then one of the unions who also joining me, and they've also issued a statement saying they reject the debt exchange, is the Ghana Medical Association. So Frank Sirimbo is the president, who also joined me. Three of them joining us tonight. We'll answer the first question, the government's afro and the people's haircut. What can be done to the government's afro when we return from this? Stay with me.